You just make sure you're strong and you go, we'll get through it.
Oh, God. All across our planet, our weather is getting wilder. And staying out of danger isn't always possible. World's Wildest Weather. Catastrophic weather events from around the world.
Yes!
Filmed on camera by those caught up in the disaster.
Everywhere.
Expert meteorologists explain the causes behind extreme events and show us why our weather has become so dangerous. Every year, out-of-control weather wreaks destruction all over our planet. And alarmingly, weather events on a massive scale are showing no signs of slowing down. In the state of Maryland, USA, the historic town of Ellicott City, founded in 1772, was home to the first commercial railroad in the country. A region prone to flooding from the Patapsco and Tiber rivers, it suffered its first devastating floods over 200 years ago. In 2016, only 5 years after the last floods, devastation was about to strike once again in what experts have described as a once-in-a-thousand-year event.
Ellicott City is prone to flooding. Hurricane Agnes in 1972, and then more recently, the Mid-Atlantic flood 2006. But what happened during the summer of 2016 was just off the charts.
That particular day, I wasn't supposed to be at the gallery, but my wife was feeling ill, so she went home and I came and covered for her. I was working on some things and decided to stay a little late. It was raining really hard. I mean, it was really coming down, and I thought, well, I'll hang out for a while and see if it slacks off a little bit before I walk up to the car. I walked out front and looked at it coming down. It was really raining hard. And shop owner, Caldoon, across the way, he was out there looking at the street, and we looked at each other and went like, wow, this is really coming down.
So the bigger picture, a lot of warm, moist air coming in from the Atlantic, and then another set of winds which pushed across from the southeast, and they met in the middle, a convergence line. Along with that, we had a high level of cape, which is really the potential or the buoyancy for air to rise rapidly into the upper atmosphere. And that really is like a rocket boosting the air right up to the top of these clouds, and these clouds were thunderstorms. So the winds carry off the old thunderstorms and they're replaced by new ones in the same area. And that's the reason why rainfall amounts were just off the scale.
So right around 6 p.m., I sent one employee home. He was wrapping up, and then probably a little bit after 6 o'clock, there was a quick lull in the rain. Still heavier rain, but enough for my employee to get out. So he ran up to his car, got out of town.
It was raining pretty hard, and there was water in the street, and that never happened in Ellicott City before. This time was different. We got what's called flash flooding, where the water was actually in the street.
Flash flooding can come under so many different scenarios. A huge amount of rain in a very short period of time where the land can't cope, or where the land is saturated already and weather systems sit over a particular place for hours and hours, if not days. In the case of Ellicott City, we had pretty much both things. So we had convergence lines, a lot of rain in a short space of time, but then the rain kept on going for hours and hours.
It had covered the whole street all the way across, and when it came up above the curb, that's when I really started getting concerned.
Ran up to the parking lot as quickly as I could, hopped in my car, and started heading home. I got maybe about another 10 minutes up the road and decided to turn around as the rain kept coming harder and harder, and decided that it's best to check on my shop. I got back to the shop and started prepping dehumidifiers and fans. As I was setting them up, the water kept coming in, and it went from maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. And at that point, some of the fans started picking up, falling over and floating.
I got concerned, and so I thought, well, I'll go down and, just be sure the basement's okay, because that's where our shop is. That's where all our framing equipment is. And I went down into the basement, and I was shocked that the water was actually coming in and had gone over my flood walls. And while I was sitting there standing against the door, holding it closed, in just a couple of minutes, that water rose about 3 feet. The door burst open. I couldn't hold it anymore. It knocked me back, and this wall of water went into our basement. I never expected a flood of this magnitude. I'd built flood walls that were about 16, 18 inches tall, and I thought, wow, that's totally great. There's no way. I'm towards the top of the hill. No way I'd ever get more than a couple inches of water above the bottoms of my doorways in the basement. And I was completely wrong. My basement flooded up to the ceiling. So I thought, wow, I should film this for insurance reasons, and I pulled out my cell phone camera and filmed our basement flooding, which destroyed our business. And then it was like, well, that's it. So I walked upstairs and went out front and started filming cars that were floating down the street. At that point, the water in the street was maybe 1.5 feet deep, and cars were tearing down the street and slamming into parked cars, and it was just crazy.
Water levels were now at their highest point, reaching 8 feet, but there was no end in sight.
Holy shit. Holy fucking shit.
Right after I got onto the ground level, went and looked out the front window, because we have these massive bay windows, and I could see my car getting picked up and thrown down the road, and then just disappeared.
I was filming cars that were floating down the street, and I just started filming Jamie's car just like any other car. And Amy, our downstairs neighbor, screamed something about somebody's in the car, and we were all yelling, steer towards the curb. She managed to steer right towards the curb, and her car stopped floating right in front of our shop.
I wanted to be able to help them, at least kind of try to guide them and communicate with them. As it was so loud with the water, the rocks underneath it, you could barely hear 5 feet from you. So I wanted to get closer to talk to her to see if we can try to get her out of that car quickly.
It was really spooky. I mean, the water was really moving fast. I think that he may have moved to dodge a trash can and lost his footing. And he went down and disappeared. He was gone. And I thought, that's it for Jason. I really thought that he was gone.
Swept away in the torrent, would Jason survive the floods? And would the driver escape her car alive? In many parts of the world, some of the deadliest wild weather events are almost impossible to see coming. After periods of very heavy rain, mountainous regions which have suffered from deforestation can provide the perfect combination for one of nature's most terrifying disasters. In Brazil in January 2011, an area north of the city of Rio de Janeiro had experienced the heaviest rainfall it had seen for many years. The mudslides caused by the rains have been described as the country's worst natural disaster in recent history.
A mudslide is a mix of floodwater and debris, which flows down a mountainside, a hill, or towards the sea.
Por trás do teleférico, a terra descia sem parar.
It sometimes picks up some speed, not always, but tragic events surround mudslides because they happen very quickly when the rains are really heavy And because they are entrenched with debris, it's a lethal combination.
Just 40 miles away from Rio, the town of Teresópolis sits under the hillside. The local population are used to seeing rain in January, but during the middle of the night while most people were asleep, catastrophe was about to strike. Childhood friends, Luciano Simbrao and Marcelo Fonseca, hadn't seen each other for many years. In January 2011, a terrible event brought them back together in ways that neither could have ever predicted. The extreme rainfall from the previous day was about to cause a mudslide that would demolish everything in its path.
It had been raining prior to the 11th of January 2011, but during the period from the 11th to the 12th, a whole month's worth of rain fell in 24 hours. The hardest hit region was about 40 miles north of Rio, where they saw 26 centimetres of rain in that short period of time. As forecasters, we like to attribute this extreme weather event to what's happening around the world. And in fact, during this time, there was a La Nina. Conditions were very dry along the western side of South America. And this really creates a sort of a seesaw effect. So on the eastern side, where Brazil is, particularly Rio, we saw a lot more rain. But we can actually hone in much more localized as well. Through the day, there was an offshore breeze. The breeze was coming from the land towards the sea, but through the afternoon, an onshore breeze kicked in as temperatures reached their maximum. So the breeze turned round, picked up some moisture from the sea and pushed inland. So there was a clash of two different winds, one coming from the land, one coming from the sea. And this is what we call a convergence line. And where these two flows of air collide, that's where you get cloud, that's where you get storms, and that's where you get torrential rain.
Na véspera, por volta das 6, 7 horas da tarde, eu vi a formação das nuvens por toda a cidade, nuvens pesadas que anunciavam que uma grande chuva estaria vindo, mas enfim, era janeiro e isso é normal naquela época do ano. Por volta das 22, 23 horas da noite do dia 10 de janeiro de 2011, a chuva que gerou a tragédia da madrugada do dia posterior teve início.
Eu morava em Pimenteiras, na casa dos meus pais, e o fato ocorrido comigo foi no Espanhol, na casa da minha irmã.
Por um azar do destino, naquela noite, ele estava dormindo na casa da irmã dele, que tinha viajado. Convite dela, ele passava a noite naquele bairro, no bairro do Espanhol, que é um bairro vizinho ao meu.
This aerial footage shows the devastation from torrential rains and mudslides in a mountainous region about 40 miles north of Rio de Janeiro. Hundreds have died, and Brazilian authorities fear the death toll will go higher as rescuers reach remote areas looking for survivors.
But out of the tragedy, there was one story of survival that would defy all odds. In Maryland, America, Jason Barnes had been swept away by a raging river that had formed due to flash floods while trying to rescue a woman trapped in her car.
It was an incredibly powerful moving water. I've never really felt water like that before in my life. Even the buckets at amusement parks that they drop on you, those huge ones. I saw it pick up my car, which was 5 times bigger than her car, and just take it down the river without a second thought. I didn't think she would have much of a chance in a bug. So, I mean, how quickly it threw me 30 feet down the road was amazing. Basically, once I got washed down the street, was able to roll out of the waters, lost one of my boots, stayed close to the side of the buildings, and was able to kind of power my way through the alley where that was flooding out. I don't know how the human chain started forming. It just kind of organically happened. I decided I'm going back out there to get her. So, Johnny grabbed onto my arm, he stretched out, I stretched out, and then JT grabbed a hold of Johnny. He went out as far as he could, and at that point we were still just a little shy of being able to get to her. My goal was to get to the car. We were hoping that she might be able to get out a little bit further and reach to us and we could just pull her in. So told her to come to the passenger side and start climbing out. She climbed out, and once she got halfway out, she was like, I can't touch the ground, I can't go anywhere. I decided to let go. I felt I might be able to, make a quick couple steps to be able to hold on to the car.
Come on! You got it!
Almost wiped out again and was able to grab a hold enough of the parts of the car to stay afloat and be able to grab her from outside the window. And then once that we were all together, it was easy to get us all back in. Once we got back into the cubby, it just got really quiet. No one really was talking, a lot of cigarette smoking. And then probably about 15 minutes later, the waters just started receding. As quickly as they came, they were gone. And that's when I think everyone went back into another level of shock because, the waters being so high, they hid a lot of what the damage they were doing.
There was a huge sense of relief because it was really, really dangerous out there in the street. And I really thought that Jason had gone down and I wouldn't see him again, but it was a huge relief.
We were able to save about a third of our inventory on the ground level. That was about a couple inches off the ground, but I'd say we lost about 2/3 of everything that night.
The total damage to Ellicott City was estimated to be over $22 million. 90 businesses were lost and over 100 homes destroyed. Tragically, 2 people lost their lives.
Our gallery frame shop, which is where we have $85,000 worth of equipment, was completely destroyed when I came back to the gallery and just saw how, what we'd worked so hard to build was just like wiped out.
After only 3 hours of flooding, the recovery took months, and the effects are still felt today. For the town of Teresopolis, the aftermath of a month's rain falling in just one day was about to bring devastation to the local people.
Era uma tempestade de proporções dantescas e eu pude ver o início dos problemas começarem a surgir no centro da cidade, quando as 2 pistas principais da cidade começaram a inundar.
Eu lembro que eu fui dormir cedo, porque eu estava muito cansado, né? E acordei por volta de 3h20 da manhã, mais ou menos, com um barulho, né, do cachorro arranhando a porta. E levantei, acendi a luz e não tinha luz, né? Fui no interruptor, não tinha luz. E o cachorro entrou e jogou lama para tudo quanto foi lado e eu estranhei aquela água.
Mudslides can happen very quickly after heavy rain, particularly down a mountainside or a hillside where there's not enough trees to absorb that volume of water. And that's when people are taken by surprise, and that's when disaster strikes.
Mas nisso, de tarde, eu lembro que tinha dado uma chuva muito forte.
The next thing Marcelo remembered was waking up in pitch darkness with no idea what had happened. Unable to move a muscle, he soon realized that he was not only trapped, but that he was buried alive.
Isso que eu estava soterrado ali, né? Os primeiros momentos que passam, né? Foi um momento de angústia, momento de solidão e de desespero. A palavra é essa.
As rescuers frantically tried to reach him, buried under 4 meters of mud and debris, the rest of the town was pulling together in solidarity. And remarkably, his friend Luciano was recording the rescue efforts as they unfolded, and with no idea who they were trying to save.
Foi complicado fazer trabalho frio, de registro, e estando com o emocional ali também envolvido na questão.
Eu estava soterrado ali, né? E a única coisa que eu sentia muita dor na minha perna esquerda. E eu escutava, né, um barulho de vazamento de gás muito forte. E o cheiro também muito forte.
The huge mudslide had completely destroyed the area, and buried Marcelo under his sister's house.
Eu pude, né, eu estava meio apavorado, respirando apavorado, e de repente eu escutei uma voz falando comigo, respira devagar. E nesse momento eu respirei muito devagar. Foi aí que eu senti que o Senhor estava falando comigo. E eu pude ter calma, pude ter serenidade para mim poder ser resgatado naquele momento. Eu não sabia quanto tempo que eu estava ali. Eu sabia que eu estava há muito tempo, só não sei relatar o tempo que eu fiquei.
Miraculously, Marcelo had survived for more than 16 hours, trapped deep under the rubble.
Mas isso para mim parecia uma eternidade ali dentro. Quando eu percebi que o pessoal queria me resgatar mesmo, né, que eu descobri assim por mim, né, que eu achei, foi quando eu escutei pessoas falando, o motor a diesel, helicóptero.
Eu só me dei conta que se tratava do meu amigo de infância quando eu vi a sua mãe e a sua irmã desesperadas chorando ali no Espanhol.
Lembro que quando me tiraram do buraco, né, a primeira coisa que eu falei foi glória a Deus, né? Tem muita gente dando glória a Deus, pessoal assoviando, pessoal me chamando de guerreiro, eu lembro disso.
Against all odds, Marcelo had survived the terrible ordeal, and the childhood friends were finally reunited in the hospital where Marcelo was making an astounding recovery. The catastrophic floods and landslides had led to over 900 fatalities and left 14,000 homeless, making it one of the worst weather-related disasters in Brazilian history. In 2009, from January until March, weather conditions caused a series of bushfires to rage across Australia's state of Victoria.
Here it comes. Oh, Jesus, look at it.
In what were to become the country's most devastating bushfires in its history.
Raging fire, killer smoke, and deadly air.
That fire on that day, that was not your ordinary fire.
It was hell on earth. But all the ingredients had been simmering for months before.
A bushfire is a type of wildfire that forms in primarily prairie grass or bush grass areas that are not like a wild forest. You're going to see generally lower grass, lower vegetation that's going to catch fire and then allow for that fire to spread.
And we saw the floorboards above us on fire and the windows were smashed and fire was coming in the windows and the door caught on fire, so we sort of had to make a call to leave.
We designed and built the house so as it'd withstand a small fire, but this was the granddaddy of the whole lot.
I'll never forget that morning. I don't know, it's hard to explain. I just sort of had this gut feeling that it was going to be a bad day. And I just woke up and you could hear the wind, and it was howling. It was hot, and it was the air was just like it was on fire. It was just, everything was just ready to explode.
This part of Victoria, they'd been suffering from drought for around 12 years, and it was a very intense drought. Let me give you some numbers. The amount of rainfall they'd lost within those 12 years equated to 1 year's worth of rain. The state of Victoria, in 2 words, was tinder dry. It was one of the worst and severe hydrological droughts in the nation's history. Needless to say, the Murray River Basin was at an all-time low. The broader picture, there are other things that could have contributed to the heat across southeast Australia, namely sea surface temperatures, locally 3 degrees higher than average. So there was a lot of heat around that area.
Someone has to be there and do the recovery and and no matter who it is, you're only human and you're going to be traumatised. because of what you're subjected to.
Soon that summer, the temperatures became record-breaking. That part of Australia, Victoria, is not known for really high temperatures. It's in the southernmost part of the country. However, during this summer, temperatures soared. On the 29th of January, Melbourne Airport didn't get below 30 degrees Celsius. The air was choking with heat, and it was a very dry heat as well. And further temperature records were broken. In fact, the day the fires started, there was a peak temperature of an amazing and incredible 48.8 degrees Celsius.
As you can see, our little fridge thermometer, which is just sitting on the rubbish bin in the shade, has blown itself.
Living and breathing temperatures of 48.8 degrees Celsius, well, people die in that type of heat through heat stress. It takes a long time to acclimatise to that type of high heat.
I think I'm going to go back inside before I faint of heat stress myself.
Temperatures were 23 degrees above average. That is just almost impossible. So 48.8 degrees Celsius in old money is 120 Fahrenheit. Imagine 1,000 hairdryers just blowing in your face. That's how it would have felt.
Did you get an update on the weather forecast?
Negative at this stage. I'm having communications difficulties, but we've had a wind change back at some stage to the northeast, northwest.
No one knew the scale of the catastrophe about to happen. In Australia, the cyclone season runs from the first day of November until the last day of April. Cyclones have occurred in the northeast of Australia for thousands of years, but for the last half a century, scientists at Australia's Bureau of Meteorology have warned that not only has rainfall increased, but that ocean temperatures have warmed and sea levels have risen. This rise in sea levels means that tropical rains now also bring with them a high risk of floods, reaching sudden and lethal levels known as storm surge.
Cyclones happen because of changes in pressure and changes in temperature. Broadly speaking, across the globe, obviously the poles are colder than the equator. So that is, at the highest scale, what's going to drive the difference in air masses and lead to different wind patterns. Remember, differences in temperature are going to lead to what we call pressure gradients, changes in pressure over distance. So when you have a change in pressure and a change in temperature over distance, you're going to inherently get conflict, and that conflict will be able to form, in some cases, a storm system, which can become a cyclone.
On March 28, 2017, Tropical Cyclone Debbie caused destruction across northeastern Australia. Helen Gallo and her family were at their home. What they didn't know was that the real threat was just around the corner.
So on the Thursday, the 30th, a normal day, got up to go to work, went off to work, dropped the kids off at school. On the way down, there was obviously the news events that were saying, you know, there's lots of water. They were talking then about saying that the state government was thinking about closing schools.
As the day progresses, we will get an understanding of the damage from the storm. We have put in place enormous preparation for this.
On the way back home, one of the roads down here, which always floods, has already got a little bit of water over it, so the cars couldn't get past through Beenleigh area. And then got home and just did preparation, had a look on the BOM website, and any updates there was, you know, how bad's the water going to get, you know, what's the significance of what we're going to be working with.
We can feel it, we can see it, and you can probably even hear it as these wind gusts are really starting to pick up. Now, the biggest concern here is the tidal surge that is coming in, and that is why that emergency alert was issued late this afternoon.
So just a typical day, went around the property, started tidying up a few things to make sure there was no loose articles, made sure all the animals were okay, and pretty much the kids and I were just at home.
Underestimating the force of nature is the biggest mistake people and weather forecasters make. With these huge cyclones, Even though the winds may ease, the rain can keep on coming because there's so much energy entrained in the system. And Debbie formed just to the south of Papua New Guinea. Initially, it was a disorganised band of thunderstorms because there was so much wind shear. So Debbie was a severe tropical storm, a severe tropical cyclone, a Category 4, and sustained winds were in excess of 190 kilometres per hour.
The ex-tropical cyclone Debbie had already come down the coast, and there was a significant amount of rainfall falling in the catchment areas of the Logan and Albert rivers. There was a real concern that the rivers were rising, and a number of residents potentially could have had their houses inundated.
Once we'd had the team together, we went out and we did storm damage jobs, which was temporary roof repairs, window repairs, sandbagging. After we'd finished that for the evening, I'd gone home for the night.
I think we finished at around 9 o'clock at night, and then we called it a night from a storm damage point of view.
So there was my father-in-law, myself and my 2 children. We were here on the property. There was an update that came through that said there was going to be major flooding. And then about 10 o'clock that night, like, the water started coming and it was running pretty fast. So I thought, I'd better go get the kids. We need to get out of here. This is not good. I got straight on the phone and called 000 and said, we need help.
Just on 3 o'clock, after I'd just climbed into bed, the phone rings. It's the local policeman telling me that there was a need for an SES flood boat as they had a family trapped on the Albert River.
I just got my uniform off, just got into bed, and got the call to say, there's a flood boat job, can you get back to Beenleigh ASAP? So we all met up here. Jim was already here when Chris and I arrived pretty much simultaneously. We prepped our boat. Jim had got most of it done. We took our boat, which is flood 4.
The kids and I grabbed torches and we started screaming for our next door neighbours. They actually came down, and there was Shane, my neighbour next door, and then Sam, my neighbour's son across the road, came down. They came down in a quad and obviously saw what had happened, and they said, give us 5 minutes, we need to go get some ropes to try and get you out. I decided that I'd get out onto the garage roof, so I had to climb off the balcony and get onto the garage.
So we've headed out to Luscombe, where Jim's then proceeded to tell us the plan. Told us that there were 3 people on a roof in the middle of the now raging Albert River, and that we needed to go get them.
I was standing on the front of the garage and they were trying to throw me ropes, but obviously the water was running so fast that every time the rope hit the water, it just took off. I knew in the back of my head though, like you always hear it on TV, you know, if it's flooded, forget it. Never go into storm waters because you just never know what's underneath it. And I had that in the back of my head going, you know, Helen, I can't do this. I can't risk my kids' lives because with that water running so fast, I knew that would be it. That would be the end of it.
The Commissioner has been wanting to get across all through the afternoon and into the night, is at this late stage to make sure you keep an eye not only on yourselves but on your neighbours, and sometimes those links in the community can be the ones that can make a big difference.
Shane was on the phone to 000 saying, look, we need more assistance because the water is rising so fast, there's so much pressure of water, because you could hear the roller doors under the house just crumpling with the pressure of the water.
Once we'd actually launched the boat, I concentrated on the app, which basically told us where the Albert River should have been. The Albert River generally is about 5 metres wide. At this stage, it was probably somewhere around about 200-300 metres wide.
There was this noise on the garage that we were standing on, and all of a sudden I saw Xander's foot just drop. And I just went, okay, we need to move. And all of a sudden, it just fell underneath my feet, and I just fell and just grabbed the top part of the roof where the gutters, the top of the roof meets. And Xander and Sienna just grabbed both of my arms and just pulled me up because it had just collapsed straight underneath me with the pressure.
Just when Helen thought the worst was over, what came next, no one could have predicted. Back in 2009 in South Australia, the Black Saturday bushfires were about to strike.
Synoptically, we've got a huge area of high pressure across Tasmania, and that's driven in lots of very, very dry and very warm air from the centre of Australia. The air is dry, the air is dusty, and the winds are strong. In fact, on the 7th of February, the wind had picked up significantly to 100 kilometres per hour. So that's not much below cyclone status. Not only wind, not only fuel load and moisture, also humidity levels. Now, humidity was very low that day, the amount of moisture in the air, but in fact, it dropped from 34% to a staggering 2%. Pretty much life on Mars. So the conditions were oppressive in themselves. 48.8 degrees Celsius, storm force winds, and everything arid and dry. The winds reached their peak around noon that day, and that's when the fires started.
Can deploy this individual whenever the settles down if you don't know it's up ahead there.
So two key things which really encourage bushfires is the fuel load and moisture content. So we're talking, well, a lot of trees and bushes in the area, and they were very dry because of a drought for so many years. So those two criteria certainly were ticked. And then we bring in the wind speed. That raging dry wind from Australia's interior, helping things along. So once a fire is started, it's going to rage, it's going to continue, it's going to grow. And to cap it all, that insidious rising heat.
I have learnt now that bushfires can happen, and they can happen quick, and they can come onto you before you know it, which is what happened on Black Saturday.
The Black Saturday bushfires raged across 4,500 kilometres, claimed 173 lives, and created $4.4 billion worth of damage. In Queensland, emergency services were still trying to reach a family trapped in a storm surge.
Started heading up the river and we came across this wall of trees. Tree tops, I should really say, because we couldn't see the bases at all.
We tried once to go up the river where we thought it looked like we were going to go, but it was actually, terrifying is probably the right word. It just was roaring.
I could see there was a gap about this much where the actual garage had started separating from the main house. So I somehow had to get Sienna back up on the balcony. So I got her up first, and then I got Xander up on the roof, and then I got myself back up and just pulled myself back up. And I felt the last bit that I lifted my leg up to get myself back up, the whole garage underneath me just crumbled and just swept away. So I phoned back 000 and I said, look, we are in dire straits. Like the garage is just gone. The house is starting to all fall apart underneath because there was just trees and just debris just hitting the house, and you could just feel it vibrating.
Claire's lit up the area really well. Jim's on the phone navigating, and then we've proceeded to head through the trees, and then that's where the river was at its peak.
So it was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I said to the kids, I said, we need to get up on the roof. We need to get up higher because the water kept coming up. And the kids, obviously, they were scared. They were like, Mum, we don't want to go back out, not after what happened with the garage. I said, we're going, because the water was already up to my shins on the top deck of the balcony on the double-storey house.
It was so noisy we could hardly hear each other talk. And I've got a lot of power going into the engine, nearly full throttle, and we're not making much headway up the river. It's difficult to explain the noise of the river that night. I'd never experienced it before. I've seen it on TV, but I've never seen it with my own eyes, never listened to it with my own ears, but it was deafening.
It's probably about 4 o'clock in the morning where they said, Helen, we've now got 4 crews and the police. The 3 SES crews on this side and the water police with jet skis couldn't get to us because the water was running so fast this way they couldn't actually get across to us.
The next part we got to was where it was really shallow, and there was probably half a dozen members of the public there. That was probably the first time I heard Helen and her screaming for her children and for help. So that was probably the first point where it's like, we're actually close, we actually might do this.
The kookaburras had started and you could actually see the sunrise coming, so it was about 4:45. At about 5 o'clock, I got another voicemail on my phone and I called them back, and it was 000 saying, Helen, they're there. They're there, they've got to you, they can see the house, they're there, and you can see their torches, you can see their lights. And I'm like, I can't see anything.
At this stage was the first time we actually heard Helen. She was actually on the other side of the house from where we were, so I don't know that she'd even seen us at this stage.
The locals have pushed us into deeper water along the road. And I've started the boat up, and we've started heading upstream. And where we've crossed over the fence line between these two big trees, I think in retrospect it's maybe 10 metres deep at this stage now over that part of the river.
So when we got upstream, we could actually hear her and see her, and we, yelled out at the top of our voices that we were coming. We'll get there as soon as we could.
She said, they're there, can you see any signs of light that you can actually maybe shine your torches to show them where you are? And as I turned around, I could actually see the torch lights shining up in the trees at the top of the property. And they said, they're there, they're with you.
Chris brought the boat around behind the two trees in question. It was coming up towards the veranda of the house, and this is the first time we've seen Grandad. We didn't know about Grandad at this stage. Chris has manoeuvred the boat. We've hit something underwater, which we later found out was a BMW. That's life.
But Helen had these two kids sort of pushed up, and she was below them, and the river just flying past them.
As soon as they got the boat alongside, Claire tied us off. I then jumped onto the veranda. I came face to face with Helen, who had her feet in the gutter, looking straight at me. Her two children were behind her at that stage.
Seeing the lights and, the high vis, and you see the swiftwater rescue crew that's there to rescue you, it's just like, you just go, wow. Like, we've actually got through it, because there was some times through that night with both of my children that were saying to me, Mum, are we going to make it?
I basically took a big breath and I said, we're here to help you. We're going to get you out of here. What I want to do is I want to take you one at a time, and I'm going to take you back down and I'm going to put you on the boat. And I explained that the boat was just around near where the grandfather was. And the moment when I stood up and saw her, the relief on her face, it was like, oh my God, somebody's here. That was just amazing for me, and I'll never forget it.
You just make sure you're strong, and you go, we'll get through it. We'll be okay, we'll get through it.
We've got out of the boat because I think we were pretty keen to step onto dry land for a little while. By then the sun was starting to come up.
It was finished and everyone actually was okay, and our first rescue, we managed to successfully get them off the roof and to shore, and no one was hurt. It was just amazing. Helen and the family had walked off to their neighbour's place. They had said thank you and wandered back down. They'd only probably been gone 5 minutes, and we hear this massive crack.
My God. Oh, fuck. Holy shit, that house is just taking out the other house.
These guys just got out of this house floating down the river right now. That's the house they were sitting on top of the roof. Unbelievable.
We all looked out into the river to see the house just bob down a little bit, and then it just started floating downstream.
Jesus Christ.
I just saw this big brown thing just moving, and you sort of look twice at something and just go, is that really what am I actually seeing what I'm seeing? Joe and Craig, my next door neighbour, just went, the house is gone. It's just picked up and it's gone. And it was 10 minutes after we'd actually got off and got rescued and got off the boat that we just saw the house just pick up and just take off down the river.
They were sitting on the roof of that house not 5-10 minutes ago. They were sitting on that roof.
There was too many what ifs, what if we were still attached? What about if we hadn't got there? And hearing Helen calling out for her children's safety and then seeing that house disappear, it just makes you think it would have been a disaster. It would have not ended well. No one could have really survived that.
We are so, so lucky that there was someone looking down on us, that night. 15 minutes is all we had from being rescued to when our house just swept away down the river from us sitting on top of it for all those hours before. We were just so lucky, so lucky.
Next time on World's Wildest Weather, a typhoon in the Philippines brings a hotel to its knees, heart-stopping rescues from UK floods, and and devastating wildfires in Kansas.